Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching today's Midday Western U.S. Regional Forecast video brought to you by Nutrien Ag Solutions. Well, yesterday across the Intermountain West, getting into the Pacific Northwest, we watched yet another chance of getting some southwest flow that kicked off some large thunderstorms that went through parts of Oregon, but Idaho and Montana as well. It's pretty clear farther to the south as you got into parts of California with just a couple of storms blowing up on the mountains there, but there's some kind of neat things I'd like to show you here, just real quick to get this started. First of all, it's the sunset. Look at the shadows cast by these deeper storms in parts of the Snake River Valley here. Really amazing to see that. And also look at the gravity waves coming off of the Cascade Mountains. The mountains kind of excite a wave in the flow of the atmosphere, and it kind of just goes downstream before things clear out here in the Columbia Basin. Also, one other neat thing to watch is at the end of this animation, the storms that pop here on the Sierra Nevada, watch them throughout their outflow that comes almost down the mountain. See it this way? Really unique viewpoint to see there. Now, further to the south in California, we know we're still dealing with a few areas that are trying to contain some large fires. If we just take a look at where the smoke is over the next 48 hours, this is the high resolution rapid refresh smoke, integrated smoke model forecast here. So air quality conditions through California and Nevada and parts of the Four Corners states over the next 48 hours will be degraded by some of the larger fires that they're still battling down in Southern California. But from there, I'd like to take the discussion a little bit different direction here, okay? Since NOAA has been keeping track of extreme weather events, they've made a chart, and this particular chart looks at extremes and maximum temperatures in the western United States. And I was very curious about the pattern that we've seen so far this year, and I want to put it in relation with this map here. So if we come to the end of this, the 2000s, what we notice is that there's kind of a period to it. Do you see it? We had a peak here, a peak there, a peak that was over the last 3 to 4 years, and then 2019 came down, and 2020 seems to be another year where it's going to come down. And I just want to let you know, I'm going to spend some time trying to understand what's giving us these peaks, the periodicity, is that the word? The frequency of these peaks, because I wonder if, I really want to know what the relationship is between El Nino, La Nina, and Pacific Ocean temperatures as we move forward throughout the next decade. Something I just want to keep an eye on for you. Because I went back and I created this animation. Are you ready? This is a 15-day sliding window of temperature anomalies starting on June 1st. We've been able to bring in, like at the beginning of June, some big time heat, but then it seems like this through mid-June that things cool back off into the end of June, and then it warms back up to start the month of July and then cools back down again. And the Pacific Northwest, while we've been able to bring in brief bouts of heat like what you see right here at the beginning of August, well, we keep returning the flow back to something like this. You see where there seems to be ridging here, the flow comes over the top, we keep getting troughs through the Pacific Northwest. And I want to talk about forecast accuracy here because right now we have a ridge here over the Four Corner states to Texas. We can see the ridge that's sitting out in the open Pacific, but this flow coming out of Alaska seems to be the way that our summer's shaped up here. So this was, what we're expecting today. And 10 days ago, this was the forecast from the operational model. You can almost see those features. See, here's that ridge. There's the one over the southwest. You see the troughs that are lined up here, and they're coming into the Pacific Northwest. And there's even the broader trough here over the east. I mean, I'm coming to you right now from Champaign, Illinois, and I'm wearing jeans and a sweatshirt today. It was a pretty chilly morning. So the operational models, especially the European, I feel has captured this pattern for the West relatively well, but not beyond 10 days. You're saying, what are you talking about? Well, let me show you this. This was a forecast from back on the 27th of July for Saturday, tomorrow. And you can see that it was hinting at a trough here, but this big Four Corners ridge and the flow coming around it like this. Well, this is now the forecast for tomorrow. And you can see that while those troughs still exist in Alaska, which means the model did a good job picking up on that, it's the repeated nature of the flow coming in like this and the rebounding of these ridges that are not well seen anything beyond about day 10. And that seems to shove the whole pattern east. So see the ridge is farther here rather than tucked back over the Four Corners. And why I'm bringing this up is because I think this is a critical part to the kind of ebb and flow of the temperatures we've seen across the western United States. So I think we should just look at the next 10 days and get an idea of what to expect. So what do we see? It's kind of a lot of the same. Do you see the troughs that keep coming out of Alaska and they sweep down into the Pacific Northwest? Watch it again with me. And that particular pattern is one that's resisting big buildup of heat over the western United States, and it's also one that's resisting getting a really well-established ridge over the southwest, which is what the models kept saying wanted to happen. So I'm right now not trusting these out beyond about 10 days. So what do we have in the near term? Well, you can see it's primarily going to be wind issues over the next couple of days. Off the coast here, and then red flag warnings in parts of Montana, then stretching from Utah into Wyoming and western Colorado. And the reason why is because when you just look at the accumulated maximum wind gusts through Sunday evening, we can see very strong winds coming off the mountains here in the northern part of Montana as well. We can see some strong winds here in the Columbia Basin, and look at how strong the winds are going to be just offshore. So if you're going offshore here, we are expecting wind gusts at times to be in the 50 plus mile an hour range right there on the border of Oregon and California. So keep a close eye on that. But let's talk temperatures before we talk about precipitation, because today it's a cool one. I mean, look at this. We've got 90s, low 90s, maybe crack into the mid 90s here in the Central Valley of California. It is still very hot in parts of Arizona, but we've seen that consistently throughout this entire summer. In fact, Arizona right now currently sits in third place for the rank of 110-degree temperature days so far this year. But up in the Columbia Basin, high of 81. I mean, that's a pretty cool temperature. But watch, the same transition that we've been seeing is going to happen again. Ready? So this is Friday. Into Saturday, a cool one for the Pacific Northwest, but we can start to see in the Sacramento Valley temperatures in the upper 90s, maybe cracking 100. Then on Sunday, this is the warm day for the Central Valley of California. See that? Phoenix 112. We're going to have temperatures upper 90s, lower hundreds here. And then that's going to persist into the day on Monday. See it? But watch. When I go from Monday into Tuesday and Wednesday of next week, we see yet again with those troughs that keep coming out of the Gulf of Alaska, we go back over to slight cool bias in the northwest. We don't see persistent long duration high heat in California. And this just seems to be the way this summer is shaping up. And I can even go beyond that and show you days 6 through 10. The models are really keying in on seeing more of those troughs, which we talked about at the beginning here. As I work out to day 11 through 15, which means this is the time period where we have less certainty, with the higher amplitude in the GFS, we see that the west is seeing cooler bias to near average the farther south you go. The European keeps wanting to back that big ridge up here, which is why it wants to put California back over into heat. But I'm going to have to call this into question until I really see what if this happens inside of 10 days. So from there, let's talk about if anything major is changing. And if you watched the video content this week, you know that we had a big discussion about what the MJO was doing. It had been over here for all of June and July. It then moved very quickly at the beginning of August over into phase 4, which kind of unlocked our pattern, gave that big heat wave to begin the month in parts of the Pacific Northwest and cooled off the central part of the United States. But look, it's wanting to retreat right back and go back over to phase 8 and 1, not doing what it normally does, which is to come around and get there, taking about 4 weeks to do so. It's going to take half that time and go straight back over to Africa. And therefore, the pattern's going to go back into what we saw throughout the months of June and July, it seems like at this point. So what does that mean in terms of precipitation? Well, this is just the accumulation of it over the next 10 days. And so you're not going to see much, and that's simply because the models are not going to pick up on precipitation during the dry season. But remember, when we have those troughs that come sweeping through, we will get like what we saw at the beginning of this video. Chances out ahead of it in through this area for having thunderstorms popping up in the mountains. That's very characteristic of that southwest flow that comes in this direction with some of those troughs. So it's going to be a scattered thunderstorm event every time one of these troughs kind of sweeps through the Pacific Northwest. From there, we might as well go out and look beyond day 10, because both models are suggesting troughs continuing to come through this area. But see how the European keeps wanting to back this ridge up into this area, but the GFS keeps it open? I have to tell you, I think that through day 10, I'm okay with both models, but beyond that, I'm going to stick with what the GFS is saying at this point. So again, the European operational, good through day 10, but beyond that, the ensembles have been flattening out the pattern and causing issue here. But with that trough-like pattern coming to the Pacific Northwest, do notice wetter than average conditions. The problem is this is not the right flow pattern to get a strong southwestern monsoon. And so we saw it shut down, and we can see that in the GFS and in the European. No real indications here of stronger southwestern monsoonal flow as we progress here to the third week of the month of August. So what about beyond that? Well, the new European weeklies were released. You can see the dates up here, the 21st to the 28th, the 28th through September 4th. In terms of precipitation, we're not going to see a signal. It's just not going to be resolved in the model. But I'll make a comment here about this. We've seen how many times this summer the model calling for sustained above average temperatures. And at this point, it seems to be something that the models continue to fail on. Alaska keeps sending troughs over the big heat dome that's in the North Pacific, that big blob of warm water there, and they come into the Northwest, and this never really gets resolved to where we have sustained above average temperatures. I think the farther south you go, the better the chances are of having above average temperatures. So I'm talking about getting into Nevada, Southern California, Arizona, but in the Pacific Northwest, I'm not seeing it. And I think it all boils down to this. This La Nina we've been watching, which has been very weak, it's trying to gain momentum. It's trying to get into this fall, giving us a true La Nina feel to the atmosphere. But there's no denying the warm water that's in the Pacific, North Pacific here. And so the jet stream's going over the top of that warm water, taking the troughs that are forming here and sending them into the west with a pretty regular kind of frequency there. And at this point, I don't have a reason to call for that pattern to change. So I want to keep you updated on this, and we'll keep watching it together, okay? Hope you all have a great week. I appreciate your time you gave me this week to talk about the weather, and we'll do it again next week, okay? Thank you.